And the Doxma is the most important temple for Zoroastrians. There are only 10 of them in the world. 8 are in India, 2 in Iran. And if you're in the Doxma, and I might as well speak that now that we brought it up, no statues or pictures are allowed. And it's going to basically hold what's called an organ. And I'll explain to you what an organ is. An organ is a fire urn, and what it represents is purity, dispelling things that are evil, dispelling things that are foul. And it's going to be attended, this fire urn, the organ, will be attended by white garb priests that wear mouth veils so that their breath does not pollute the sacred fire. And only these priests, and the Zoroastrian priest is a Mobed, only these priests could enter the room, no one else. Okay, so basically the highest form of temple for Zoroastrian today is in the Doxma. I don't want to go into the others. We don't have time to go into a Tashatalan or an Tashdagda. I don't want to confuse you too much. But the Doxma is the highest form of Zoroastrian temple. Now, what I wanted to basically tell you is when Zoroaster makes his first convert, which is his cousin, the Joma, his preaching, Zoroaster's preaching, will anger the established faiths and their priests and teachers. Obviously, they don't want to be told that they're teaching the wrong thing. Okay? An established and entrenched faith doesn't like being challenged. And Zoroaster is laying down the gauntlet here. His view of the world is totally different, and he's forced to flee, taking refuge at the court of an Iranian ruler whose name you're going to see around the lower middle of Zoroastrian terminology. This Zoroastrian convert, this ruler, will be Kai Vishtaspa. He's the first ruler to convert to the message of Zoroaster. Now, why is he going to convert? It's really simple, okay? It's not elaborate.
So wait 1 second, sorry.
Sure, that's okay.
He's taking refuge where, I'm sorry?
He's taking refuge at the court of Kai Vishtaspa, okay? And Kai gives Zoroaster a chilly reception at the beginning, because he's going to originally take in Zoroaster, but he's going to imprison him first. That's how he takes him in. However, Kai, and we'll call him Kai because it's easier for teaching purposes, Kai will release Zoroaster after Zoroaster restores his favorite horse to health, after his horse was paralyzed. So it's believed by Kai that Zoroaster has some kind of magical ability. So because of this, Kai and his family and his court will take on Zoroastrianism. They'll believe in Zoroaster's message. So Zoroaster is now going to have his first official royal convert. Okay? Now, the kingdom's prime minister, a man named Jamaspa, will become the spiritual successor to Zoroaster. And you'll see Jamaspa's name also on the terminology list I gave. Okay, Jamaspa is going to take over as the head of the Zoroastrian community after Zoroaster will die. And he's going to stay loyal even when others are violently opposed to Zoroaster. Okay? So he's going to stay loyal even when people are violently opposed to Zoroaster. Now, Zoroaster himself was a practical man, and once again he taught that people should live in the real world, which means you don't distance yourself like an ascetic As you get older in Hinduism, you might leave your family and go out into the forest and meditate. You become a sadhu or a sannyasi, as they're called. For Zoroaster, that's not the way you do things. Your life is in the real world. You serve God in the real world by your actions, not by disengaging from the real world. You stay committed to the real world. It's your duty to stay in it. Does life suck? Yes, it does. Because Anvarmainu is always active with temptation, with evil. But it's your duty not to run away like a little coward and hide into a corner, curling up into a fetal position. If you're a good person, you go out there and you fight evil. Okay? So you become Superman, Wonder Woman, the Green Lantern, the Flash, all rolled into one. Okay? Now, Zoroaster himself was married 3 times, having a son and 3 daughters by his first wife, and, he had other progeny. Now, at the age of 77, while preaching right over here in the city of Balkh, which is in modern-day Afghanistan, but was then within the influence of Persia, of Iran. Remember that there are parts of Afghanistan that the boundaries were drawn by the British and the Russians with the Durand Line in 1885. But there were parts of Afghanistan that were always in the Iranian orbit. And we'll talk about that when we talk about the hostility that the Iranians will have for the Taliban later in the course.
What year was that?
And this is at the age of 77, Zoroaster will be killed. We don't know the exact year. Now, some claim that he was killed with a ritual dagger. Some claim that he was killed with a ritual dagger by a priest of the old order who did not want to see Zoroaster's message spread. That's right. That's exactly right. Okay? Now, there are others that claim soldiers killed him. But, after Zoroaster's death, his faith would begin to spread, and they'll spread with the return of ritual, which is something Zoroaster didn't like. But, they're going to lose the original martial focus of the Indo-Aryan faith prior to it, meaning that Zoroastrianism is going to lose that more like Elan that the Indo-Aryans had. Remember, Indo-Aryan religion before Zoroaster was a religion that glorified war and martial exploits. Is Zoroastrianism totally pacific? No, you have the right to defend yourself. You should fight evil, but you never glorify war. If you have to kill an evil person, that's something you had to do to protect others, but it's not something you jump for joy over. Okay? It's not a good thing. Now, as far as the Zoroastrians basically go, I wanted to tell you that they each believe that every individual has a Pravashi. A Pravashi is an innate guardian spirit, and it exists before people do. So when you're born, you get a Pravashi that will be assigned to each and every one of you. Okay, do you know the name of your Pravashis? Do you? Okay. Go right ahead, Alex Sanger, and then we'll talk to Paul. Yes, exactly. It's going to be beneficent force, and it's going to also assist people in distinguishing what's right from what's wrong. It's going to be your moral guide, like a conscience, if you will. Paul, did you want to add something?
Should the doctrine of Zoroastrianism, is that like a conducting some kind of population explosion?
Yes, and the fact, yes, and I think the fact that it was alluring to certain people that wanted to make themselves look like righteous rulers, and that they were in effect appointed in position by Ahura Mazda. And we're going to talk about that when we get to Cyrus the Great.
Okay, because in warriors, warrior society, ruling, there is aristocratic lines, but it's very shaky.
Very much so.
You're pretty much ruled by the very selfish guy in God or anyone at all.
Oh, definitely.
Whereas if you're in a settled society, you need a king or something that has some kind of permanent overall arc into it, and that's only based on this division that is caused by numerous.
That's an excellent point. And that's exactly right. Because when Zoroastrianism begins to sink root is when the Persians, when the Iranians will actually create a sedentary society. And it's going to make it easy to have universal law when you have a God that gives universal law. And this way the ruler could make it look like he's backed by the heavens. So if you rebel against the ruler, you're not just rebelling against him and his humanity, you're rebelling against the cosmic order. It's an affront against nature. Up to a point, but I don't even want to get into that all because I've heard all sorts of stories every time, I've been to a lecture regarding dating exactly. The further you go back in time, the harder it is. So, but I just want to make mention that when Zoroastrianism does sink firmly, it will do so under the eminence, and we'll be talking about them very shortly. Now, Shirley, I have a question or comment. No. In Egypt, the ruler was deemed to be a god. Okay? And in Egypt, the pharaoh, which means great house, is actually supposed to be a god. And he's actually, upon his dropping of the body, upon his death, he's supposed to ride in the solar boat across the heavens, fighting the demon Apophis, which is in the form of serpent and slaying him. The Mesopotamian kings themselves were not gods, but thank you for the musical company. Now, basically, the Mesopotamian monarchs were not gods, but they were appointed to rule by God. If you look at the stele of Hammurabi receiving the law, he receives it from the sun god Shamash. And if you look at ancient China, the Chinese emperors were not gods, but they're appointed by Shangdi, the Chinese celestial deity, to rule. They're ruling with the mandate of heaven, with the command of heaven. So they're appointed by gods. Basically, in Japan, the emperor is considered a god and would retain that divine status until recently. So it's not the first time, no.
I was really more like
Oh, in Iran? Yes. If you meant specific to Iran, surely you're 100% correct. Yes. And we wanted to go now. Yes, go right ahead.
I'm sorry, when you say that Zoroaster died and they continued to participate, was it Jamatva that?
Yes. Yes. He's going to continue and going, right? Think of him as a kind of Zoroastrian answer to St. Paul, okay, who would help spread the Christian faith after Jesus Christ was
But he
crucified.
changed it a little bit as he went. He went back to the
They're all going to change it a little bit because, of course, listen, you ever play the game telephone? I tell you something, you tell it to someone else, say, by the time it goes around the room, you might hear something totally different than what I told you. So, basically speaking, I would say that the essence of Zoroaster's message did not change that much. Gentlemen, are you okay? Is it something you're not understanding? Well, remember you have your terminology, and Jamaspa actually is going to marry the daughter of Zoroaster. He's actually going to be the son-in-law of Zoroaster. So it's related to him in that way, Marcos, okay? But he was converted by his ideas. Now, I'm going to tell you that the Zoroastrianism that you see later on, Zoroastrianism is going to be referred to by scholars as part of the Mazdian faith, which means variants of Zoroastrianism that differentiate over time. Because is Christianity the same now as it was during St. Paul? No. Okay? All religions tend to morph over time because they're going to address challenges that they didn't have to address. Right? And Ken, you had a question or comment. Oh, Pam,
Well,
I'm
sorry. You had
That's
mentioned
okay.
that there was no eyewitness of Zoroastrian. Now, is there eyewitness now of Jamatva?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. People are more certain about him, but once again, we have problems with dates. People argue over them. And the dating is always very inexact, especially further, you go back in time. Okay, Henning? Okay, not a problem. Yes, Faisal?
When he was talking about God, when Hindu don't believe the Ram or king, he was about to get that.
Yeah, the Hindus also would believe that too. You know, and of course, remember something also about Hindu deities. They die, and they get reincarnated themselves. Okay? Yeah, you think of Vishnu the Preserver. You know, he comes back in several incarnations, right? He comes back as a man lion Narasimha. He comes back as the turtle Kurma, who carries the world on his shell. He comes back as the boar Varaha, who pulls the world out of a watery abyss with his cups. He ushers in an age of destruction with Kalki, the white horse. So, you know, and of course he's most noted as Krishna, that great lover of wind, and the fellow who saves the world by swallowing poison that was meant to destroy everyone, and it turns them blue. You know, so you're going to see that. Yes? Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, that's interesting too. Of course, when Alexander the Great began to get pretensions of divinity, that kind of alienated him from some of the other Macedonians along the way, right?
The Mormons did the same thing too.
What's that?
The Mormons did the same thing as Paul said. Like, you go to the Polak, there's a planet called Polak, every husband and wife became born. So the Mormons did something like that.
I'll have to wait for that. Hopefully not. I won't. Hopefully it'll be a long wait before I find out whether it's true or not. Yes, these are all interesting comments. I just want to say a few things. In fact, Zoroastrianism is not a congregationalist faith, meaning people don't tend to worship together. There are 6 major festivals that they share where they basically meet for communal prayer. And these are called Gahambars. Okay? And you'll see them at the very bottom of page 1 on your Zoroastrian terminology. So these are the only occasions for communal prayer, shared meals, and singing and dancing. Okay? If you're going to say prayers to Ahura Mazda, you normally say them individually or in family groups. Okay? So you're not going to say them collectively, you're going to say them individually, and you're going to divide your days of prayer into groups called GAHs, G-A-H-S. And this is 5 times daily prayer to Ahura Mazda. For those of you that are familiar with Al-Ibadat, the 5 pillars of Islam, Al-Arkan, you would know about the Salah, which is the 5 times daily prayer toward Mecca. This has its roots in Iranian Zoroastrian religion. Well, they're going to divide the periods of the day for prayer. Morning when you wake up, okay? Early afternoon, late afternoon, evening, you know, midnight, okay? Different parts of the day. Why do you do this? To keep God consciousness, okay? To always show gratitude to God for what you have. Okay? Patrick had a question or comment. Originally, Zoroaster was against animal sacrifice, which he always was against, and rituals like fire. Originally, although he relented on that, he began to accept fire and ritual. I'm sorry? What he was for was a commonality of belief. He didn't like so much what we would call dogma, meaning ceremonies, rituals for the most part. He would probably be okay with the 5 times daily prayer though, because you're doing that in your own life and you're keeping God consciousness that way. And there's a direct link between your prayer and what you believe. I could light a candle, or I could say a prayer that's not formulaic, okay? I could say a prayer that's formulaic. If you say a formulaic prayer, what usually happens? Sometimes you just go through the words without thinking about it, right? Okay, it becomes mechanical. You know, in the 1990s, in former Yugoslavia, you had ethnic cleansing there, where you had crimes committed against Bosniak Muslims. Okay? You basically had Serbs and Croats participate in. The Serbs and the Croats hated each other. They're both Christians, both went into church and would say the same prayer. Father, forgive us our sins as we forgive those who sin against us. Really. And you go into the battlefield and kill other Christians. So you just send yourself to hell. You know, but what Zoroaster believes is this is where Ahura Mazda really lives. The temple is secondary. Do you have, is it okay to have basically ceremonies by priests to pray for the good of the community? Yes. But do you basically cause everyone to have a regimented life? No. He didn't want robots. He wanted people that would willingly surrender to Ahura Mazda.
So he was against fire, so was he the one that created
Originally. But later on he's going to accept fire as part of the ritual, but you don't worship the fire. Fire has symbolism like water does. It's a symbolism of purification.
So just what his father did to him that he was against fire?
I don't think he held that kind of a grudge. Okay. You remember the story.
It would be against his whole philosophy.
That's interesting that you bring that up, but no, he didn't quite see it that way. You know, now, with regard to the actual holidays that they have, one of the most important is going to be one which is celebrated even among the Shiite Muslim community of Iran today. It's the Iranian New Year, which is usually on March 21st, March 22nd. Think of it as a vernal equinox, right? When the sun goes into Aries, for those of you who are astrologically inclined. It's the start of the new year, okay? And the year of the Babylonian Zodiac. Now, basically, as far as the Zoroastrian faith goes, you're going to probably ask yourself this question. If it made a lot of converts in Iran, and Iran is going to have an empire soon, why didn't Zoroastrianism, say, spread to Greece, or spread to India, or make large converts? There are several reasons for this. First of all, the fact that it's not a congregationalist faith will work against it spreading outside of the borders of Iran. Okay? Because of the fact that people that would be converted would not have the benefit of worshiping with fellow believers, they would most likely not have the ideas reinforced. That doesn't mean that Zoroastrianism won't try to make converts. And it will try to make converts along the Silk Roads when Silk Road traffic becomes pronounced. And the Silk Roads will be an incredible causeway, not just for commerce, but for cultural exchange. Remember, if I'm trading goods with you, I'm also exchanging ideas. Human beings share ideas, right? So the Silk Road will be an artery for the spread of Nestorian Christianity, Mahayana Buddhism, Islam, Zoroastrianism, and a variant of Zoroastrianism, which we'll get to later, which basically is very controversial, and that's Manichaeism. Okay, I have a question. You could be curious, that's not a sin. Both. But if I'm going to basically try to proselytize, okay, what I would try to do is make something simple, easy for you to understand, and easy for you to accept. And I have to find out what your beliefs are too. Because if your beliefs are so alien from what I'm teaching you, the more alien it is, the more likely you are to reject it. Okay? So keep that in mind. It's always a hit or miss. You never know when you'll make contact. Just like, you see that today. You get people on the subway that are always going to hand out flyers, this is, my version of Christianity or whatever, every now and then you get some, and believe me, I enjoy listening to everyone talk about their faith. I don't know if I necessarily want to hear some screaming at the top of their lungs in the subway car, but you know, anyone that would listen, you try to get your message across, right? You know, now, with regard to Zoroastrianism, I'm going to tell you that it doesn't spread because of the fact that it's non-congregationalist, and there's something else I want to talk to you about, and then we're going to almost close the book on Zoroastrianism, and I want to take you to the first empire of Iran. A Doxma means a tower of silence, and I'm going to tell you how the Zoroastrians view the burial of the dead. First of all, people tend to be very sensitive about how the dead relatives and friends are disposed of. Okay? The Zoroastrians believe that a corpse is physically and spiritually defiled, that it's contaminated. Therefore, to bury someone in the earth would be to pollute the soil. To cremate someone is to pollute the air. Therefore, what you're going to do is you're going to take corpses and you're going to put them into a Doxma, which is an open air enclosure, and you're going to allow vultures to pick the flesh clean. Carrion feeders will do that. And what they're basically going to do is once the bones are picked clean, a priest will take them out and put them into an ossuary, which is a bone house. Okay? And no, he won't be giving them to a dog. Okay? So don't figure, clean your imagination. Yes, go ahead. Yes. No. They treat him with a little more respect than that. Okay, they'll be put in an ossuary, a bone. And Christians sometimes have this too. I'm sorry? What about it? Oh yeah. Where they're going to attract carrion. That's correct. Is David? They're going to pick it. They're going to take it out when basically everything is. When the bones are literally picked clean, they just take them out and then they just put them in a separate house, which is basically a bone house. And there are a lot of people that feel kind of uneasy about this because people usually don't like their relatives to be disposed of in a way that seems almost, it's like throwing someone into a garbage can. Yes, hold on one second. Put that away, and I don't want to see that come out. If that comes out, you go out. If you're not interested in learning, get the fuck out of here. Okay? Now go right ahead. I'm sorry. This is practice for one day. Yes! And that's the main reason why a lot of people don't convert to Zoroastrianism, because they don't like the way it deals with the dead. Okay? If I want to let you know that in Bombay, modern day Mumbai, they built many high-rise buildings. Hindus would complain when they wake up in the morning and they see Parsi communities that have Doxmas, so when they wake up in the morning to have their breakfast cereal, they look out and they see vultures picking apart corpses. That's not an appetite enhancer. Okay? That's one of the many reasons why they don't like it. Read, and then we'll go this way around. These are going to be specialized priests that will do that. Go now. You put the body in. They don't touch the body. They're going to wear specialized covering for their hands. scrub, and they're going to put sheets around the body and they're going to flip it over. They will not physically touch the body. That will be considered polluted. Okay? And yes, Oreo, from the north. An ossuary, yes. No. No. They just keep them there and that's it. Yeah. That's it. Okay? And that's another thing. For people who like to visit their loved one's graves, if you're Zoroastrian, you're not going to do that. You may be worried about their spirit, about their soul. You're not worried about the decomposition of their body. Yes? No, because people eat all sorts of things, like animal food. It shouldn't go back into there. Okay? The body itself. You know, it's one thing if it comes through planet. In fact, you know, there are active cycles of predation. Okay? And that in itself is not defiled. So you don't have to worry about the vulture being defiled. Oh, you know, you won't be needing where you're going, or what? Right? And Tracy Lee, they're going to be put in Doxma. Think of it as like a small Madison Square Garden without the roof. That's it. Okay? Yeah, when the vultures are done. You know, and every now and then you come back after a few weeks or whatever, and the ones that are decomposed, you take the bones out. Yes?
What are the pork units in China?
I'm sorry?
Pork units in China.
Sometimes, yes. Sometimes, although not for the same purpose. Different purpose. And yes, go right ahead.
I have a different question about spread, but I want to wait until the... Yes.
That's okay. I'll tell you what, if that's the case, why don't I field these questions and we'll come back to you short. Okay? Yes, go right ahead, Matt.
So, since we don't care about the body at all, can it be anything?
They don't think about it because back then, if you're talking about nowadays, then I'll answer that after class or whatever. I don't want to get into contemporary issues. But basically, the idea back then was, you know, you pollute the soil, you pollute the air. Okay? And Erica, do you have a
I
question?
was just going to piggyback on first. So they're not, when they put them inside, it's not for one individual person, it's for the mass, whoever passed in that.
Yeah, because that would be
time period.
a waste of space for just one person.
Okay.
You know, you're not going to build
So
the
they don't
Doxma for
interact.
each individual, it's collective. You know, when they kick the bucket, you throw them in there, you feed the vultures, take them out, and then you start the cycle again. Josh?
Did the carrion feeders have any like spiritual significance? Like were they like were they like looked at negatively or positively or?
Interesting. It was looked as more of a cycle of nature. This is the way you get rid of the bodies without having that flesh go into the earth and pollute it. Okay? So, and of course, as you would guess, there would have been a floor preventing the bodies from basically having direct contact with the earth, because that's contaminated. Okay?